welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Good to see you here. Good to be here.
Last time we were right next to each other. We were at the Connection, and we actually did this live. So we're back to virtual, but it's good to see you.
We'll see if we can impress as much as we did back then.
From a distance. Jeremy, if you don't mind, before we jump in, topic today is going to be marketing, area that you have expertise in. If you don't mind, for those who haven't met you, maybe give a little background on your role with IDOC.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Jeremy Bono. I've been with IDOC for the last year, and my role of responsibility is the Optometry Marketing Services team. So essentially what we do there is we help fill your patient schedule with the patients that you want by building custom websites and helping with a wide variety of marketing services so that you can achieve the goals that you're trying to get through. So in essence, that's what we do. I've got a great team, a phenomenal team, six folks on that team. We've got strategists and content managers and designers and SEO managers, and they're experts. They do the hard work that makes the service what it is today.
Fill your schedule with the patients you want. I like that. That sounds really good.
That's the problem we're trying to solve for. Yeah, that's the one-liner. You heard it.
So we were talking the last couple of days. We were kind of going back and forth and having a conversation around marketing and practice growth. And I think that evolved into this idea to get together on a podcast and talk about a topic, which I thought would be a good topic, even though it's October 1st, but setting yourself up for 2026. Is it too early to talk about that?
No, we're probably a little late, to be honest. I mean, you've got 3 months left. Hopefully you're still working on carrying out the remainder of your strategy that you set forth last year. So let's just say that that's the case. But now is a perfect opportunity. You've got 9 months behind you that you can draw experience from. Plus you've got all the years prior to this that you can draw experience from. And now you can start looking forward in the next year, figuring out what you want to achieve. And then all of the activities that you did this year, what worked well, what didn't work, what would you change, how would you do it differently? So I think it's a perfect opportunity to do that. So what's that, 12 weekends? So you got, if you can parse out 2 hours each weekend, just to make that happen, I think you've plenty of time, and it's a perfect opportunity to do it.
It's a great launching point into actually the first question I was going to ask you as you start looking to the next year and planning for that. I think it's a good point to look at the previous year and what worked and what didn't. So if you're a doctor looking into the next year in terms of marketing and strategy, maybe just overall strategies to grow the practice, I mean, what's a good approach to take to look back and identify the marketing strategies you used the year prior to say, hey, this worked or this really didn't work, and determine which directions you're going to go?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to answer that question is to go back to ROI. I mean, obviously, if you spent X number of dollars and you expected to achieve this much revenue from it, well, then you have an equation to figure out whether or not what you did worked the way that you wanted it to work. But not everything in marketing is directly tied to ROI. And I'll say that because all the effort that, as an example, all the effort that you're giving on social media, let's say, is really probably 90% your existing patients. Okay. Unless you have like this massive following on YouTube or Instagram or something like that. But in most cases, you're just trying to use that platform to connect with your existing patients. You're not spending a lot because you're probably not running ads on it. But you're also not getting a lot from it in revenue. You're trying to just stay in front of them. You're just trying to maintain that expert status with them, and hopefully along the way inform them of new things that are occurring in the office. So it's not always tied to ROI, but that's one of the things that I would look back to say, did what we do last year work this year, and will we do it again?
It's a good point that the marketing that you're doing is potentially, you made a point of connecting with 90% of the people who are already your patients. And there's value to both, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
value to staying in front of your current patients and that awareness factor, but also getting the word out about your practice to other offices as well. It it leads to my question, which has to do with differentiation. And a lot of the marketing that I see, and maybe you would agree with this, all looks the same, which isn't necessarily a good thing,
It's
right?
not.
It's not. Okay,
It's
thank you. It's not a good thing because it doesn't stand out. And I see a lot of the same ads, a lot of the same approaches, and it doesn't really stand out. So from a differentiation standpoint, a lot of practices struggle to stand out. It What is the most effective ways to communicate what makes our practice different than the one down the street?
if you're having trouble answering that question on your own, there's count it a couple thousand patients in most every practice that could help you answer that. They have the answer. They are patients of record. They come to you, and if you ask them why they come to you, they would be willing to tell you. And in those stories, those examples, those pieces of feedback will come what differentiates you from where they were before. So if you don't know the answer already, a great place to start is with your patients. Heck, your team should be able to answer that question too. They probably worked at other practices. They probably could tell you why they love working with you more than and why they stay working with you. So you don't have to come up. That's one of the beauties of marketing. You don't have to come up with everything on your own. Rely on the folks that are around you to help tell that story. And actually, it comes across even better than what you could design on your own. Because what ends up happening when you design on your own is we provide exceptional eye care for families, and that's, I mean, you've seen me ask that question in front of hundreds of people, and everybody raises their hand. Yes, we do that. And so that's not a differentiator. But what is a differentiator maybe is that you're a multifocal expert providing, I don't know, travel friendly optical solutions. Like maybe that's your niche, or maybe you're the eco friendly boutique, you know? So it just takes work. It really does. I mean, you just got to isolate yourself, got to spend the time to answer those hard questions or to ask those hard questions.
And I would go so far as to say, if you can't answer the question and your staff can't answer it and your patients really don't have a good reason, then maybe you haven't done enough to stand out to differentiate. So it may just be a moment of reflection and honesty and saying, we're kind of blending in with the competition here, where we might be wise to actually come up with a strategy for 2026 that makes us different. I think a good approach is looking at what the competition is doing, right?
Heck yeah.
Benchmarking, going to their website. Sometimes you get intel from other patients who come in from other offices and say, I don't like it there because of this reason. Pay attention to those. But it's, especially in a smaller community, it's not that hard to find what is not being offered or what needs are not being met in that community.
Great point. That's a great point. Especially for those folks that are in startup. They don't have the track record. They don't have, they might just have a couple of hundred patients that are in the door at this point, and so they don't have the feedback, the stories. Patients sometimes in those cases haven't even been there more than one time. So if that's the case, it's harder to come up with. And then in that case, you do look at your competition, but also, what do you want to be? I mean, I think you can start there too. If you don't have the answers from your patients and your team, and you're having a tough time finding it in your competition, just look inside and say, what do I want to be? What's going to make me happiest? What's going to make me feel like I'm having an impact on the community, on my patients? Start there.
That comes up a lot with specialty services because doctors have asked, what specialty should I go into? And my answer surprises them a little bit, but a lot of times they'll say, well, what do you want to do? What are you interested in? I'm sure somewhere out there's a vision therapy doctor who doesn't like kids. I just haven't met that person yet. So yeah, I think you got to look inside your heart and really consider, what am I interested in? What do I want to do? Maybe your thing isn't even practicing. You want to manage the practice and hire associates, but I think you'll have a lot more success when the work that you do is aligned with that. Look for the differentiation there. And then you build out your marketing, right?
Yeah.
Then you start looking at your social media presence, your website, because I've seen so many practices that I know they're different in a good way, right? And I go to their website and it's like, what are you doing? This looks like it's the most bland website that it doesn't tell anything about what the practice really stands for.
Yeah. I kind of think about it like this. If you don't know why patients should do business with you, it's going to be a real hard time telling them that they should. I think it's probably something that we get caught in. I see a lot is just that um, they're not necessarily seeing you because you have your degree. Like there's another underlying reason why they've come to you. So let's, peeling back that proverbial onion to try and figure out what that true reason um, is super, super critical. You can't, in my opinion, you got to start there. All the money and messaging and campaigning in the world do nothing if you don't know and can't tell a story about what makes you great. What are you the best in the world at, or best in your community at?
And if you're not there yet, at least have that vision and start putting the plan in place to get there.
Yeah.
I think that's what gets you out of that. Because I've asked this before in lectures, what is the vision? What's your 5-year plan? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And it's really a mix of some people have a lot of clarity on that. Some are a little vague and some are just, well, I haven't really thought at all about it. And I almost promise you that if you put thought into that, you'll get out of bed in the morning with a little bit more excitement about going and trying to accomplish that goal. You brought up money. So I'd like to pivot to that because I think that's something that most optometry practice don't spend a lot on marketing.
Mhm.
I don't know what your thoughts on that are. It ranges somewhere typically between 2 to 3%. It's pretty small. Now, whether they should be spending more or whether they can, or it's just not in the budget. But what are your thoughts on a budget and how to set that up? How do we allocate money for marketing in a way? And I know it's not a perfect science, but obviously we want to put money into something, as you mentioned before, it has an ROI. We don't want to just throwing money at something just for the sake of doing marketing, but we're not seeing a return on those dollars.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd start with an evaluation of the status that your practice is currently in. Are you in startup mode? Are you in growth mode? Are you in, sustain and retain mode? Or are you on your way out? You want to sell the practice. So I would start with the stage that you're in, and then that will dictate whether that's 3% or whether that's 1.5%. But I will caution everybody not to start with that static number. I would not say, what's my revenue? And then what's 1 to 2 to 3% of that? And that's what I'm going to spend on marketing. I would work in a sense backwards. I would figure out who you are first, figure out your ideal patient second. And then I would move into what are the tactics and messaging that need to be deployed in order to drive the right patients into my practice to make the right money that I want to do to make me happy. So then you come up with this whole list. It could be paid ads. It could be getting out and networking. It could be being a part of this club. It could be going and speaking at this event. It could be a whole host of things and all the costs associated with that. And now you come up with what that total cost is. And it might end up being 4% of your total revenues. And if you're really convinced that spending that 4% is going to get you to where you want to be, well, then do it. Versus coming up with this arbitrary, 2% number and going, well, if we would have just spent more, I would hate to see at the end of the year you didn't achieve your goals just because you didn't spend another 2%. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And the farther you get into practice, because I talked to a lot of practices that are further along as well, will tell you we don't have to spend as much anymore. Now, maybe on a dollar per dollar comparison, they're actually spending more because it's a smaller percentage of a smaller percentage of a larger practice. But less than will say, hey, we built our way up. Word of mouth is really what's driving the growth here. That they put a strong emphasis on the level of service they provide, and your patient base becomes your marketing team.
Yeah.
and it's free. And it sounds cliche, but I hear that over and over from practices that have put the work in over the years in creating a great patient experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great point in that it's talking about the difference between what we would probably a lot of folks refer to as marketing when it's actually advertising versus marketing goes all the way into every single piece of communication that occurs within the practice, whether that's a social media post or it's a paid ad, or if it's a conversation between a patient and an optician, that's still marketing. Or if it's a handshake at a booth at a country fair, that is marketing. Um, so I agree that, over time, you probably do end up spending less, in some cases, once again, depending on the mode and what your goals are. But the effort and the consistency that needs to occur is still the same or should be growing. So it may not be spending as much, but it's probably doing more and focusing more.
Do you look at have any kind of a suggestion on a breakdown or allocation in the terms of that budget, whatever that is, in terms of how much you would put into methods or strategies that have worked in the past versus, I think you said use the term hedge your bets before.
Yeah.
So there's always new things coming along, new ways of attacking marketing, and some things are just don't know for sure how they're going to work until you try them. So maybe this is a issue for a more seasoned practice, but how much of that budget would you take and just keep putting onto things that have had success in the past versus trying new strategies that maybe you are less, have less of a track record in your practice?
Yeah, I like to diversify just like with, finances and the market is really based on doing a number of different things. Some of the things that are going to work, that you always are going to continue doing. Okay, maybe that's your regular communication with your patients via newsletter. Maybe that's your a blog that you're writing. These are things that need to be standards in your practice. But then some of it maybe is you haven't looked at your website in years. And so you might be missing out on a whole host of opportunities that patients just aren't seeing you because your SEO needs to be updated. Content, your images need to be updated. Or maybe it's something new like a paid ad on Google or Meta, something to try. If you're going to try something new, don't just try it once though. It's not, let's try it for a month and see if it works. Try for 3 months. Just make a commitment. Say, I'm doing this for 3 months so I can have an honest evaluation of whether or not it's going to work and should I continue doing it. But a lot of it's going to stem from the stage of your practice. So if you're in growth mode, you need incoming patients and you need to keep the existing patients. If you're in growth mode, you need all incoming patients. It's all about awareness. So you are going to be spending more time out in the community, shaking hands, and you're going to have to be more present digitally. So I think it's a dependent thing, but I wouldn't just do one. I would do multiple. I'd reach out in multiple mediums, in the manners that your patients, these ideal patients that we talk about, that they want to be communicated with. How do they want to do business with you? And those are the manners that I would reach out to them in.
Yeah, and I think it's an important thing you mentioned on consistency. When we are exposed to ads from major companies, you're paying attention, they don't just put a commercial out there one time, right? You're seeing it over and over. You're exposed to the same messages from companies consistently, whether that be TV, whether it be social media. You keep hearing it. So I think the effort to continue that could be very beneficial to the practice versus just trying something once and say, well, that didn't work.
Yeah, it's my second most, I guess I would say that's my second pet peeve, probably one of two. Accountability is one thing, consistency is another thing. It doesn't matter what part of life it is. You can't achieve what you want to achieve, whether it's in the gym, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your faith, whether it's in business without being consistent about some things. And so if same applies to marketing, you're not going to expect to put on 10 pounds of muscle or drive 100 new patients a month if you're not consistent about it. There's no off time. There's no play for 6 months of the year and have off time to rest and recoup before you get into training camp again. There's none of that. Sports had kind of ruined that for a lot of people because they think that that's how it is, but it's just not. It is an every day, it is an every month, every week sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think spreading a wide net consistently it's just important. And look at all the avenues for marketing. And I know we've had this conversation before. A lot of times we talk about marketing in 2025 going into 2026, our minds immediately go to digital, right? And website and social media, but don't overlook. I've heard you talk about mailers. And if you want to remark on that real quick, you made a good point that there's not as much junk mail, so it stands out. I'm still a big advocate for just getting out into the community and meeting people. I've shared the story before. I'll share it real quick. And I apologize if you're hearing, this for the third time, but when I was practicing, I used to get ophthalmologists and specialists would send their some marketing materials to us looking for referrals, and they would send their business cards. So in the drawer that I would reach into when I had to refer, I would a lot of times reach in there for a business card to give them for a specialist in the area. There was one doctor I kept consistently going back to. And do you know why? He was the one person who came in and asked if he could talk to me for a couple minutes. And I went out and he introduced himself and I could put a face to the name, and he was a super nice guy. And we talked for just 3 or 4 minutes. And then he said, "Hey, thanks for meeting with me." And the majority of the time I opened up that drawer, I was grabbing his card. Get out and meet people, not just other doctors, although that could be a good approach too, but just get out into your community, get involved, because when somebody needs an eye exam, they're going to go to the person that they know, that they're familiar with. I don't think we think of that all the time, like marketing, but it is. It accomplishes the same task if the idea is to grow the practice and get more people into the office to do business with you.
100%. 100%. I had that conversation with a practice. I've been having that conversation with the practice over the last several months, and encouraging them to get out and interact with the colleagues around them, whether it's a chiropractor or if it's some other specialist in eye care, or if it's a primary care physician. And all you're doing is calling them and asking them if you can meet them so that you can learn more about them. That's it. If people like hearing themselves talk, and when they get to tell their story, and you have somebody who's genuinely interested in you, that gets to tell their story, then if it's the right person, they'll ask you about you. And now you have a connection. And so I can't rank that high enough. Like you can't stop doing that. Otherwise you'll find yourself in a situation where you've been around for 25 years and now there's been extreme changeover in the colleagues around and none of them know you. And that's not a good spot to be in. Referral network will dry up.
And back on the point of differentiation, I would say too, as you look into 2026 and how you present your marketing and how you present yourself, it's not just what you're saying, but how it's said as well. So I can't help but notice a lot of the marketing I see that stands out. It just has a certain delivery that's either funny, it's comedic, or maybe it's a little edgy. I don't know. We have to be careful with that as doctors, but we can be a little edgy as long as it's professional. What's wrong with that? If there's something unique about you, your practice, it could come through in your personality. Let that show. So I would say, don't be afraid to let the real you shine through in your practice. I think I know some doctors who are the most hilarious, funny, outgoing people, and then when I look at their marketing, it doesn't reflect that at all. Or maybe the vibe when you walk into the practice has a certain energy to it that does not come through in the marketing. So don't be afraid to create marketing that's actually going to stand out and connect with people.
Yeah, you make a great point of something that is often a miss, which is making sure that their experience online matches what takes place in the practice. And much of that is because their experience online, it's not that they're overselling themselves. A lot of times it's underselling themselves. They're not being themselves online versus when they're in the office. They get this whole, fun-loving, experience with everybody laughing and telling jokes, or it's some like everything's in its place. It looks like a coffee shop, a place that you can, hang out and sort of a Bed Bath and Beyond type feel, Starbucks type feel that, if that's not shown on your website, how would they know that they would love to spend time to just have coffee in the practice? So, it's got to match is the hardest part. But I agree. You're doing yourself a disservice if you're not letting that shine through in any of your marketing.
All right, Jeremy, this was great as always. I just want to get together, and I hope we gave people a few ideas to get their mind working, get their mind spinning about what kind of strategies they might want to start to think about going into next year, and looking at the last year as well. What worked, what didn't, what could we do for next year, and maybe thinking outside the box in terms of how are we going to market ourselves in a way that's going to get, coming full circle, get an ROI. Right? If we didn't get the ROI we wanted last year, what do we need to change going into next year to get a return? So thanks for your time. Always appreciate it.
No, great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Tell us real quick on the way out the door, IDOC Marketing Services. I forgot to ask you about that.
Yeah. So with IDOC Marketing Services, a lot of people just think that we just build websites. But I would encourage you to think of us more as an agency. We can help you with other aspects of your marketing, and the way that we find out how we can best help you is to have a conversation with you. So reach out. You can find our contact information on idoc.net, or you can go to optometrymarketingservices.com and reach out to us and just schedule a time with me or with one of our strategists, and we'll get to know you a little bit more and figure out where we can help you. So that could be a blog. It could be helping you run your Google ads. It could be anywhere in between. So, yeah, I think that would, that pretty much sums up what we do at OMS, and invite anybody to call, even if it's just a chat for a couple minutes.
Yeah, check out the link. Give them a call. You guys do great work. I know we're right next to you, so I know that you guys do great work. And realizing as well that this conversation around marketing, a lot of people listening to this say that all sounds great. I still want to do it. It's just not my interest. It's not my wheelhouse, and that's fine. Anytime you own a business, operate a business, look at the things you're good at and you want to do, and consider outsourcing the things that you don't know much about or you don't want to do, and it's just going to take up time. So, and click that link, go to our website, and find out more about our services. But thanks again, Jeremy.
Thanks, Dr. Barrow. Have a good one.
You too. I don't know how to pause on here, but I'm just going to leave the room. I'll edit this part out later, but hey, thanks. That was great. That's what I was looking for. A little teaser for 2026. And we couldn't cover everything, but
we could go. I mean, we didn't even get into patient journey or anything like that. There's so many other things that we can cover. So, but I appreciate the opportunity, because as I do more of these, I'll get more comfortable. And I like the fact that we could just have a dialogue. This was like, it might as well not have been, I mean, you could have said, I'm not recording it, and I would have never known the difference. So I think it's organic, and I like the way that it comes across. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, no, I think it came out great, which I'm trying to be mindful of the time, because we find that people tune in more when it's 30 minutes instead of 45 or whatever. But
yeah,
we did great. So I'll just end it up.
Cool. Thanks, sir.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. Sounds good.